Hello and welcome. The purpose of this short review video is to recap information about the 2023.1 release of Blue Open Studio. The largest benefit to this release is adding additional functions, including a Python scripting engine to enhance the capabilities of the mainly dealing with the STM6000 IoT boxes running Blue Open Studio. So while this new Python language support is beneficial in all platforms, for example, Windows, and it also works in Linux, here we are focusing on the STM6 Box IoT in its Blue Open Studio Linux runtime. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so just a real short agenda. I'm going to briefly go over where the basic information is. I'm going to show you some documents related to the EdgeBox. We're going to have a talk about the different architectures, some different possibilities of architectures with the EdgeBox, and then we're just going to briefly go over some of the things that are in the 2023.1 release and how that directly impacts the EdgeBox. All right, so in Proface.com, you'll find the EdgeBox, the EdgeBox IoT with Blue Open Studio under the Proface EdgeBox section. And then you'll notice down here you've got different EdgeBox, right? You have EdgeBox PC, you have Gateway Box, which is a blue runtime box, and then you have the EdgeBox HMI, which is the Blue Open Studio runtime box. Okay. Here's some documents and guides that can help with using the STM6000 EdgeBox HMI. I will place all of these links in the video down below, so to speak. Okay. Here's just just a brief look at the product specifications. One thing to note is the Blue Open Studio 500 tag runtime is pre-activated and built in. All right, so now if we jump right into architectures, here's a slide that we will expand on, but in a nutshell, this is showing basically the EdgeBox at the center of your architecture, right? So you have the ability to say store data in the internal flash or to USB memory, etc. within this EdgeBox HMI. And then if we kind of start from the bottom here, what we're showing here is this is where we're connecting to all the different devices, PLCs, robots, servos, inverters, temperature controllers, whatever they might be, whatever communication medium, whether it's serial or Ethernet, we've got the ability to do that with all the different drivers, etc. And then if we kind of work our way up, and we look here, we're talking about remote visualization. So even though this is a box without a screen, we can still create HTML5 based, basically you save the screens as HTML5 and you can remotely view them in any HTML5 browser. You do have the ability to use Proface Connect, so our Proface Connect VPN system. The EdgeBox has the ability to be a client for that. Okay, and then up here what we're doing is we're showing how we can connect with OPC UA. We can connect through databases. Here's some more mobile access stuff. And then as we move up in the hierarchy, we're talking about using OPC UA or MQTT to talk to a cloud service. We're talking about we can use tools like business intelligence dashboards, and things like that. And then we also have the ability to get data into databases. So the concept is that we're delivering data from the lower level all the way up through the top level via this fairly simple, easy to use box. Okay. So moving on. So this is basically what we've talked about before with Proface. So this is the Proface. Basically, this is sitting within this HMI centric concept of where basically with Proface, depending on the different hardware, in this case we're focusing on the EdgeBox, you're putting that EdgeBox in the center of your architecture. You've got the OT stuff down here, and you're driving that all the way up through the IT layer. Okay, so here's just a couple of more specific, say, use cases or architecture, possible architectures. For example, being a protocol converter, right? So if for example, I have these different devices, I have some serial devices, I have some Ethernet devices, etc. I can, if I need to say, get some data from a serial device into a robot or from a serial device into a PLC and vice versa, I can use the built-in drivers and the built-in functionality within the EdgeBox to facilitate those data transfers. At the same time, I can also push that data up to a database, for example. Okay. Now again, then we're talking about on-demand HMI. So say we have a case where we have a little, say, faceless HMI in here that's going to be collecting data, etc., doing different things, like what a normal HMI would do. But let's say we don't actually need to view, we don't need to view the HMI very often. So what we can do is we basically have an on-demand type system where either on-demand via my, desktop in this situation here, or via a tablet with a browser, I can call up that HMI screen anytime I need on demand. Okay, it doesn't need to be on 24/7 necessarily. All right, so that will finish our discussion about the different possibilities of the architectures. So if we kind of go back and look, what we're talking about here is we're talking about, this is kind of an overall picture of all the different possibilities. Here we're talking about the HMI-centric concept where we're putting the EdgeBox, in this case, in the center of the architecture. Here we're talking about one possible architecture for a protocol converter, and then here another possible architecture has a on-demand HMI. Of course, the applications are potentially limitless, so to speak. So just keep that in mind. You got a lot of flexibility in this box. Okay, so let's move on now and talk about the things that were changed in Blue Open Studio 2023.1 that are, and specifically how these changes are impacting the EdgeBox HMI. Okay, so the first one is this Python release. So what we're talking about here is the addition of a Python scripting language in Blue Open Studio. And then the message here is that the customers are expecting us to provide an open, popular, and a platform agnostic scripting language, and that's what Python is, we believe. Okay, it's supported in the HMI and Linux runtime, so that's the part where we're impacting the EdgeBox, and of course, and it is also supported in the Windows runtime. All right. The EdgeBox will support the Python, the standard libraries that are part of Python. So if you look at this index here, that will tell you what the standard libraries are. So the main thing here is this is basically opening, again, it's giving us, especially in the EdgeBox, it's giving us a new, say, better programming language that we can use outside of the math sheets, which is what we were limited to before the Python release. And then what Python is also giving us is it's giving us the ability to do things that we can't necessarily do in the EdgeBox today. So perhaps if we're talking about email, or perhaps if we're talking about direct database connectivity, or different things that we are limited to in the EdgeBox today just because of the scripting limitations. Hopefully the Python can overcome many of those limitations, opening up many more possibilities for us to use the EdgeBox. Okay. So probably the biggest impact is the Python. So here's just, I'll go through this real briefly because we've discussed this before. This is talking about how there was no history control in the EdgeBox before, and now we have history control, so we don't basically overwrite our memory. Okay, standard driver sheets. Okay, before in the EdgeBox, we were only allowed to use main driver sheets, which gave us some limitations, especially related to, maybe you could think of it in the MQTT driver. Only having a main driver sheet made it a little bit more tricky to manage. Having the ability to say standard driver sheets for MQTT can help, or for organization purposes for sure. And just in general, just again, giving us more flexibility within the EdgeBox to do different things. Again, related to communications, tag integration, another big one. Before, we could not do any tag integration functionality with the for the drivers that we do support tag integration for. So those drivers where we kind of have a convergence between they're supported on the EdgeBox and they support tag integration, there's a convergence zone in there, and perhaps I'll add that to this slide when I post the final video. It'd be an interesting thing to see. But basically what we're talking about in the EdgeBox is this ability to now do tag integration. Again, and what this is doing is this is giving us the ability, this is hopefully giving us development advantages, saving time, etc. Okay. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this was some benefit to learn some different things you can do with the EdgeBox, and you just hopefully get your start thinking about the different possibilities of use cases for the STM6000 EdgeBox HMI. Thank you for watching.